What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, ninjas and ninjets? My name is Tyler Austin, founder and CEO of REISift, and you're listening to the Real Estate Dojo podcast, acronym RED, because we help remove red lines from your P&L, focused on real estate investors, agents, anybody marketing directly to homeowners and trying to convert more prospects to leads and more leads to revenue. This podcast is really just where we bring on individuals, break down their business, and then we talk a little bit about some key things that they could do in order to drive the needle forward, be it in their lead gen, their marketing efforts, their lead conversion, whatever it may be that they're struggling with. Today we have Drew and Phil with us out of Ohio, and they are doing kind of a couple different things, utilizing REISift from the prospecting intake all the way to the lead conversion aspect of things. They got some flips going on. Primarily, I think that's their main thing. We'll dig into that. I don't know how much wholesaling they're doing specifically, but we'll ask them a few questions. We'll get you familiar with them and then their operation, and then we'll dig into the meat and potatoes. Let's bring them on real quick. Boom, boom. Drew, Phil, thank you so much for coming on and being vulnerable.
You got it. Looking
Thanks
forward
for
to
having
it.
us.
Awesome. 100%. So let's go ahead and break down first, just so people understand you guys. Number one, how'd you guys meet?
Well, actually, Drew was a very close friend of my stepson. So I met Drew when he was a very, very young lad.
Okay. So family, friends and acquaintances. And then when did you guys start deciding to, like, who was the introduction here to say, hey, let's do real estate together? Or, like, I don't know, give us the breakdown how you guys got started.
Yeah, it was actually, again, it was my stepson, when I started the company about 2 years ago, suggested that I reach out to Drew. And I said, well, okay, why? And he said, well, Drew's really interested in real estate. He's already bought his first investment property. And so you should reach out to him and see if there's something you guys can do with each other. And so that's what I did. I reached out to Drew. We had lunch, talked about what his goals were. He started working for me very part-time for Drew. It was about 8-9 months, right?
Yeah, I was working, W-2 at the same time, part-time.
Yeah. And then he's been full-time with the company since the beginning of last December.
What was the roles? Like, who was responsible for what?
Well,
Might have lost it for a second.
All
Yeah.
right. So I guess initially he was kind of doing all project management and acquisitions. And then he kind of brought me on to start, the whole marketing engine, direct to seller. So I'm kind of organizing the marketing. And then in February of this year, we hired 2 VAs. So I'm, managing the VAs, doing some lead management as well, a little bit of cold calling myself or some Sensei flow, and then driving for dollars. Those are my responsibilities. And then we're kind of both doing a little bit more project management, and then hoping to, hire someone else in the future to do the lead management role and kind of scale it up from there.
Okay, awesome. Looks like we have you back, Phil. So really, your marketing responsibility, and both doing a little bit of lead management each, and both doing some driving for dollars. Who would you say is if you were to say, hey, this person's responsible for lead conversion and this person's responsible for money generation? Who is there a split there, or is it like both people working towards the same things there?
When you say money generation, if that's, bringing on investors, that kind of thing, is that what you mean by that?
No, I mean, like, cool, we're getting leads, but now who's responsible for those leads actually converting into revenue for the company, I guess is the.
Well, we're sort of making a shift in the company right now, and so Drew is primarily responsible for managing the VAs and the direction that they're going and the list that they're using, and is obviously the primary user of REISift for that purpose as well. We're shifting more to, as Drew suggested, into him handling more of the project management. That's going to be a process, but and at that point, I'll take more of that of the lead gen as I'm able to hand more off to Drew from a project management standpoint. And then, our goal will be to likely to hire somebody in the kind of primary lead gen role that he's been taking so far.
Okay. So in terms of lead gen, we'll go ahead and kind of continue pulling that thread a bit. As of right now, you guys, the main data focus, we talked about was probate, tax delinquency, evictions, bankruptcy, D4D, and pre-foreclosure. Would you say you guys are strictly focusing on all those right now, or is there one that is your primary number one?
With the two VAs, we've been able to handle first to market on those, I just finished kind of building that process around, how many we can handle from all those different lists. But okay. I guess priority is going to be probate and driving for dollars is our main priority.
Yeah. And part of it too, Tyler, is that, we're trying to really focus on our own county. And we're in Summit County, Ohio. It's the primary city in our county is Akron, and so it's not a huge county, and so it's not like LA where we're it's just massive numbers of all of those niche lists. Those niche lists are not really that huge, and in fact we were taking on much more with when we were doing more wide scope, like doing like high equity lists and things like that.
Right.
But not getting a lot of traction on those, and hence why we've decided to focus on these specific areas, niche areas.
Okay. On the note of probate, how many of those do you think you can get a month?
A month, probably about like 120 or so usually.
Okay, so that's comparable to my market. About to say. And D4D, how many are you guys adding there a week?
Per week, probably, probably like 250 at least per week, if not more.
Okay. And what is your current criteria on your D4D list? Like, are you guys saying, hey, it has to meet X, Y, and Z ugliness? Or like, is it just, if it's anything and you just tag it as needs a roof or needs windows, or how are you guys handling your D4D?
So we do have the tags for like the visual identifiers, like the chipping paint or roof or, tall grass, overgrowth stuff. But we also we do like a 1, 2, 3 tag. So like anything that's a 1 would be much more distressed looking than a 3 might just be some light distress in addition to the visual identifiers. And that's kind of how we've been prioritizing those a little bit. So we'll like Sensei flow the ones that are worse and then maybe throw the 3s with the light, like just some tall grass or something and throw that into the dialer. So yeah, we've been tagging, I guess, in those different ways.
Okay. So, alrighty. And so focusing on probate and D4D here, because I don't want to get too much in, because your tax delinquency, does that happen on a monthly basis or does it happen on an annualized basis in your county?
Yeah, it's annual. I only pulled the list from PropStream. So at least so far, that's all I've done.
So be careful with that. PropStream's tax delinquency could just be federal in your area. It might not be county taxes or state taxes. So make sure you do some QCing on that to look physically. Hey, take a handful of records from PropStream and then look on your county to see is it correlate. A lot of people pull probate and they're wondering why they're not getting too many leads. And it's like, well, what is the actual taxes? It combines all taxes together. Okay, cool. So, all right. Well, so that's like an annualized thing. Now, the stuff you mentioned that you got some stuff from this website. I believe it was called realsupermarket.com. It's a first for me to understand. That's where you're getting your probates from?
Correct.
Okay. And have you looked into the county and like how efficient it would be to get it direct from the county, or what was the reason for going through them instead of the county?
Yeah, the reason why, we can easily access them through the county. It's just you have to like click on the document and it's not like typed out, so it's only like written out. So I guess you just have to go into each one individually. So I guess we just thought it'd be better to pay the $2 and some cents, per lead that way, rather than, taking the hours to go in there through each document. But we're open to, whatever you recommend.
Well, I'm just curious because true first to market would be direct to the source as soon as it comes, right? And so if we're going to focus like on a niche, there's some really there's a lot of ways that we can really dig into it, and probate's obviously a fantastic niche to focus on. Like for example, when a probate gets filed, depending on your county, you might even have like a deed type, like PB for probate, that might end up popping up. And so pulling the PB list, once a week from the county, pulling, scraping the probates from the actual, the new probates that got filed, because PB happens a bit into the probate process. And so you kind of paint the picture of the probate working its way through the actual probate process, starting from pre-probate, probate's been filed, maybe probate never gets filed, and then it actually moves along to the next step. Deed gets changed to PB, PR gets assigned, and so on and so forth. So there's kind of like in foreclosure, you have notice of default, like, hey, you haven't paid your bill once. Another notice of default. So you have upwards of 3 months of notice of defaults. Then you have a list pending, and then you have an auction date. And so you have this different paths, and people pull these different lists to target the record specifically to the phase of the process that these people are in. Ideally, the sooner you get to them, the better. But if they're 1 month behind, that doesn't mean that they're in distress. It might mean that they just sucked at being an adult like I do, right? Comparatively to maybe somebody who's actually got an auction date set. There could be different levels of urgency there in order to generate an actual like highly motivated lead. However, waiting till later versus now, right, can mean different things. So you could say, hey, I want to market to pre-probates. Oh, they're not interested, but then I noticed that they never file for probate, or I noticed, hey, it did file for probate, or hey, a PR has been assigned, and now we re-engage in our follow-up. And there's a lot of different things that you can kind of, the rabbit hole you can go down there to make sure that you're keeping up with them. But for now, let's kind of just start looking at a few other things real quick. We're going to loop back to probate in this D for D thing in just a minute. But I want to kind of just summarize and get a good idea of how your flow and your process is right now utilizing this data, okay? So right now you guys are using REISift, Deal Machine for your dialing for dollars, Air Call for your dialing. You guys have PropStream, Ready Mode for any of the more bulk dialing, Skip Genie for some niche numbers or just pulling more numbers, Flip Force for analyzing flips, I guess, which totals about $2,500 a month, and then $1,400 a month for VAs. So all in all, you guys are about $3,900 a month for the operation. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Fantastic. So let's kind of write down the flow here, or I'm going to write down the flow as you kind of express it to me. New probates come in. What's the frequency of which you're uploading probates?
Weekly. So I just have an email every Thursday morning with all the niche lists in my email, and then I just upload those once per week.
Okay, so they're like, hey, new data has come out. You open up the website and you got to pull each one individually and then upload them. Basically, pretty straightforward process.
Correct.
Okay, so it's actually not just probates weekly. It's any of the stuff that you pull from that website's weekly.
Correct.
So what all do you pull from there again? Then the eviction, bankruptcy, pre-foreclosure.
Right. Yeah. Probate, pre-probate, pre-foreclosure, code violations, divorces, evictions, and bankruptcy.
Okay. So you pull those lists, you upload them on Thursday. What's next?
And then, so I immediately just kind of go through the flow. So I'll bring them I upload them to REISift, and then, skip trace them. I guess we'll double check for duplicates first. So that's why we uploaded to SIFT first. And then we do skip trace them with Versium. So I will export them and then re-upload the phone numbers and update them. And then as soon as I do that, then they go into the ready to market filter, and I just send them then to the SIFT line.
Okay, so SIFT line being a feature that REISift has right now. It's under beta, but it basically what it allows you to do is take records be it leads or whatever it is, and throw them into a pipeline, a process in order to work the data. So let's just go ahead and, well, before we do that, actually, about how many records is that on a weekly basis total?
So for all the niche lists together,
Yeah.
Usually I want to say like no more than a couple hundred, like on a weekly basis, maybe like 150 or so.
Okay. It's about 150. Okay.
It
So
definitely fluctuates.
that's pretty cool. Okay. So about 150 there. And about how many do you think you get back from skip tracing?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. If I had to guess, I want to say, I don't know, I want to say 90% that we get a hit on, but I'm not really sure about that.
Okay. So let's just say 150 times 0.9. We'll go off the 90%. So it's 135. Are you doing anything to the difference of that 10%?
So the ones that we don't get a phone number for, so I'll put them into the system into deep prospecting, so that I'll either then at the end of those attempts, or the first 3 attempts, then try them somewhere else, or just send them direct mail.
Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So after you get the 135, those go into, do all those records just go into the same board, or are you sending the different ones into different boards, or is it just like, hey, this is all the new stuff, send it to a board?
Right. So I created a board for each list, and then I just kind of like attempt, or like never attempted, and then attempt 1, attempt 2, deep prospecting, and then return mail from that.
Okay. So how do you know right now what needs to be sent mail from that board? Out of curiosity, because I know like you can't, when they click on a record, you can't, do they open a record up and just add a tag? I can't remember. Can you add tags through SIFline right now?
So we're just using, we're just kind of just moving the card over, and then anything that's deep prospecting, then I'll send mail to, if we didn't get any kind of response from them.
Right. But if it moves over to deep prospecting, how do you know, or how do you grab those to send mail? Is it a manual thing? You just write it down? Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just I'll send mail to them like from Deal Machine right now.
Okay. So you just look at the address, go to Deal Machine, add them to a mail campaign. Okay.
Yep.
That's what I was trying to figure out. How does that, because I know you can't export from there and you can't do it in SIFT, or so how is that playing? Okay.
Yep.
Do you know about how many a week go from 135 to send mail?
So go all the way through. I think last week was 60% will go all the way through without touching them. So 3 attempts and not getting a hold of them.
Okay, and you're doing call, SMS, voicemail, the whole like.
Correct.
Are you skipping in a second location?
So for right now, the ones that we get in the email from the website, they come skip traced. So if we don't get hold from there, then we'll use Versium. Or for Driving for Dollars, we'll just start with Versium, and then if we don't get a hold of them, then I'll skip them with SIFT. So I guess we're using a few different places, but yeah, we will use a second source.
Okay, so about 60%. So out of 135. That would mean that only 81 make it. I mean, 81 go down to mail. What's that? Which would mean 35 minus 81, which would mean that 54 people would be contacted out of the 135. So okay, so let's dig into some other KPIs real quick, because so I'm gonna put green here, 54 reach. Let's dig into some KPIs. break down for me, if you have them available. Let's just talk about the total amount of dials. Like just kind of read it across me. I want to know the total amount of dials. I want to know how many wrong numbers you get from those dials, how many correct numbers you get, and just, whatever you can spit out at me.
For sure. Okay, let's do. So we've kind of put more emphasis on the Sensei flow in the last 3 weeks. So I guess I'll kind of just take the averages from the last like 3 weeks. So for we've kind of ramped it up since then too. But so for prospects, I'll just say, do you want like a weekly like average or just any like?
If you just give me the last month, just give me the last month's percentages averaged.
Got it. So prospects 960. Dials is going to be 3569.
Okay.
1 lead. 71 not interested. 75 correct numbers. 99 wrong numbers. 340 dead numbers.
How many wrong was it? I'm sorry.
99.
Okay, and then
340 dead numbers. 25 DNC. No answers is 1,026. SMS sent 829. SMS responses 117.
Okay. Okay, so 960 prospects, 71. So let's see, how many total pickups then did we get here? Because I don't know that that's adding up to 3569. So hold on, let me see here. Calculator. I'm going to use my phone. It's a little bit easier here. So if we take, so here's the big thing I want to look at. I want to look at, okay, so we have 75 correct numbers. Let's just divide that by the total amount of dials right away. And so 3569 is a 2% correct number ratio. Okay, so we're gonna. We lost Drew. He'll come back on. So I'm gonna write down here in orange, 2% correct. And then so I'm always going to look at correct number ratio first, because if I look at the correct net ratio number first, that tells me the identifier and what KPI I need to look at second. Because the reason for the correct number ratio could be a few things. Is it because people aren't picking up and I don't have the opportunity to ask them if they're the correct homeowner? Or is it because people are picking up and I have more wrong numbers than I have right numbers, right? And so right away when I'm hearing the skip tracing flow, we're getting data, $2 for a niche prospect plus phone numbers. And if that's our first source of dial through and we're not using another location that's sole, you could be getting a ton of just crappy phone numbers, and it could be having a drastic effect on your amount of leads, because out of 960 prospects to only get 75 or only one person interested is we can't survive off that, right? We need to make a change from that. And the question is, boils down to, even only 71 not interested, is still, pretty low. So we want to get that adjusted. Welcome back, Drew.
So let me ask that question then, Tyler. Is that looking at 2% as a poor number in terms of that percentage of correct numbers to dials? What is a reasonable target that we should expect with better skip tracing?
So really, anywhere between 2 to 5% is there. You're just on the really low end side of that, but you can get up to a 15%. Anybody who's between 2 to 5%, if you're 3 to 5, really what I like mostly is 5%. Like, okay, I see 5%. I know that we can generate leads and we can close deals at 5%. But what I want to do is make this, and this adjustment in order to get us to 15%, 10 to 15%. At 2%, then I need to work to figure out how do I get to 5%, because, but even still though, the fix to go from 5 to 15% is drastically different to go from 2 to 5, because our problem right now isn't with, like, for example, something that I would say might be the problem is, well, maybe we have maybe just doing stir shaking and trying to get less spam likely numbers would fix the problem. But that's not our problem here. And the reason I know that is because I can look at my other ratio percentages to tell me, well, my problem is X, Y, or Z. So what I want to look at next is I want to add up the total amount of dead numbers here, DNC, and correct numbers. So as of right now, DNC is 25, dead is 340, wrong is only 99, and correct is 75. So it's only 539 phone numbers, and if we then add in our not interested, which or our no answers rather, 126, that's only 1565, which only accounts for 50% of our dials. So a few things that pop in my mind is like, okay, is our no answers including double taps? Is our dials including follow-up attempts? Is this just initial? Because the numbers aren't adding up, essentially is what I'm saying.
The no answers don't include double taps. So like we might dial twice, but then that we only mark the no answer once.
Okay. So then, because from 960 prospects to 369 dials, sounds accurate. It's about 3 phone numbers or so per record, right? Yeah. 2 to 3 phone numbers. But the rest of the breakdown doesn't add up, and it scares me a little bit because I don't know if my correct number ratio is then accurate. I know my correct number ratio is accurate, but it doesn't give me a really good identification to see what's there. And my guess is that our no answer is must either be way higher, like by about 1,000 dials, or our dead is much higher, or more likely actually than either of those is that our wrong numbers is extremely higher. The wrong numbers being higher and deads being higher obviously is would hint towards bad numbers. No answers being a lot higher would hint towards the time of day or spam likely or other scenarios, right? And so I'm always looking between dead and wrong and then no answers. But as of right now, there's about 1,500, dials that I can't account for, and I don't know where they belong in the wrong, dead, or no answer buckets. So I can't really give you guys a very accurate, response there. But what I can tell you is that our correct number ratio is low, and so for the amount of dials that we are making, we're having to really, push pretty hard. So what I would say is you're at 960 right now. Which is a good baseline to say, hey, at 960 prospects, that's a pretty good baseline to go off of to know that, hey, what I need to do next is try to work on X, Y, or Z. What I would suggest from just right off the bat is, if you guys are using Skip Genie, you guys are already, saying, hey, I don't want to do the niche from the county. I want to do it from this source because it's quicker. Okay. Don't sacrifice on 2 levels. Sacrifice on 1 level. If you're going to sacrifice on the receiving of data, don't sacrifice on the contact numbers for the data. You can't win twice. You know what I mean? By trying to do that, I think it's probably affecting you pretty heavily. And of course, I'm not going to know until we see KPIs there. But what I would do is I would say, hey, let's continue pulling from this location. As long as you verify that that's the data is accurate. But let's skip trace in a separate location, and let's have them work like right away, right? Let's skip trace in a second location right away, because I want to see after 1,000 prospects or even 200 prospects, 500 phone numbers or 1,000 dials, what is our correct number percentage then, and see if it goes up on us. Okay. If it doesn't go up, then okay, well, did our wrong number ratio go down, or dead number ratio go down, or our no answer ratio go down? Or what was the breakdown of those ones? Because it's just, as of right now, we don't have that information. I can't say, but what I can say is that out of the people you do talk to, you do have a low correct number ratio. And so that would be one KPI we do want to work towards. I just wish I could tell you guys a little bit more about why you have a bad correct number ratio. If it was because people aren't picking up, because then we could focus on that, or if it was because most of the phone numbers are wrong or dead and you're not getting enough phone numbers to be able to say, hey, these are correct. But that's drastically hurting you because you're only bringing in 200 new records a month, right? And out of the ones that you are bringing in, it doesn't sound like to me that back end of it, I mean, you're only reaching 20% of your data set, right? Because right off the bat, 150 of them, 10% of them, you're not getting phone numbers for. And then only 40% of them are making it through. So, which out of the 10%, well, here, I could just do the math on it. 54 divided by 150. So I guess it's more like 33%.
Would it help if we did not double tap when we were calling, like for the correct number ratio?
Well, is the amount of dials including double taps?
Correct.
So if the amount of dials is including double taps, is you double tap every number?
Yeah, that's the thing. I would say normally I double tap all, like the first few, but maybe then we should only just, I guess, keep it consistent. That way we have a consistent KPI, right?
Yeah, you need to keep it consistent. Or if you're, it's like if this first location's only giving you one or two phone numbers, then, it's like, well, so yeah, so let's just assume that, let's just assume 1,000 of those are dials that you put here, the 1,000 of those dials. See, that's just hard for me to believe, though, even still, that would be our problem, because out of 960 prospects, you have 3,569 dials, which tells me an average of 2 to 3 phone numbers per record. And at 2 to 3 phone numbers per record, that's pretty normal. How many phone, like, does the place that you download the data from only come with one phone number for each record?
So we've kind of tried different things, because when we were skip tracing with Versium, they'd give you 5, but then, like a lot of there's a greater chance that, like numbers 3, 4, and 5 would be dead. We were getting more dead numbers. So then I kind of tried to use less phone numbers, and they have like a single, like just the best number. And I tried that one, and it only has one number on that. So sometimes.
So, but the place that you pull the records from,
they usually give you 5.
They give you 5.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm then confused then, because out of 960 prospects, it's hard to know where is your, like, no shit, no matter what, if I pull 150 prospects, it's definitely going to go through these skip tracing providers.
Could you say that one more time? Sorry.
Out of the 150 prospects that come in a week, where's like the for sure they're going to be going through these skip trace providers, the very first place you get the data from. So they're definitely going to go through Versium.
Yep.
Yeah, and several of those, like the probates, again, several of them, even some of the other niches, have already been skip traced by the service that we're using.
Right, and that's what I'm getting at. Is, so are those ones also going through Versium, or is it?
Yeah, usually I'll either skips, like stack them. So like do like a best phone number with Versium on top of that if we don't get a hold of them. I've tried kind of doing the whole 6 attempts with like 3 with each skip tracing service as well. I guess maybe we just need more of a consistent, like, over time, so we can build the KPI and be able to tell.
Yeah, I would really like to see something like that. I really like to see, like, because here's the truth, right? This is something that you can't. You got to be careful with your brain convincing yourself that that's the problem, and now I move over here, right? A lot of individuals, like, just for example, last night I went live in the Facebook community group. Were you on that one where I was calling that one? Okay. Yep. I skip traced that record in REISift the first time, came with one phone number, wrong number, right? But that person's dead. It's probate, right? So we expect that to probably be the case. I skip traced the PR through REISift. I got 5 phone numbers, and the third phone number was the correct phone number. Right. And so the reason I say that is that, how how many people skip trace records through REISift, even, for example, and they skip trace the owner that's there. They don't reach anybody, but then they don't do anything else for, moving forward. So that second step, right, in this case of probates, because we're talking about probates here, that second step of skip tracing the PR or skip tracing another relative in the same provider can yield drastically different results, right? Skip tracing even that one owner from one provider to another could be different results, right? And so, but at the end of the day, people close deals from Skip Genie, people close deals from Versium, people close deals from all of them. But when you break down the KPIs, you can find the one that works for you. But if you're going to choose one, you just got to make sure that you do the back half of it, and you can't commingle a bunch because then it just gets super messy. Stick with two, do one first, always and consistently, whatever one's going to be the quickest kill, right? And then do the second one always and consistently. Otherwise, yeah, you don't really have anything to stand on, right? We can't improve anything if we don't know where the problem truly is, because there's too many variables in play. All right. When you're prospecting, keep it simple, but keep it strict, right? Call through the records, call through each phone number, mark it, move to the next, and press. Okay. All right. And so let's, the thing that concerns me though still is not even so much the skip tracing side of it, but it's the fact that 60% only the 60% of it makes it to the end without any contact. That tells me that there's some things that need to be kind of cleaned up a little bit in that flow. And I'm just trying to think of the best way to kind of go about it, because we should be reaching more than only 35% or so at the end of the day, right? Like what it sounds like to me needs to happen in that flow on a weekly basis out of the 150 people. It's not very many, right? It's like almost a perfect amount, right? We want to bring in that 150. We want to have it skip trace in one location. That 150, if you're pulling this on a Thursday, then I would say on that Friday, we're going to call through. We're probably going to be finishing up the previous week, but leading that next Monday is going to be the previous week's data, right? Is probably what the best way to go about that was. And then so from Monday through Wednesday, it's working through and getting all those initial phone numbers done. And then after Wednesday, everybody who we didn't reach, skip trace second location, right? Re-upload them. And then Thursday, we're going back through those again. You have 2 VAs, so it's plenty of people to work through that easily in a day, or even between Thursday and Friday. But then moving into the next week, so you have to stagger these campaigns. 150. What's going to happen after the 2 locations is you're going to have some records that we need to start reaching out to siblings. And so you need to do that extra step of figuring out, okay, if these are probates, then do we have a PR on file? If we do, let's skip trace them and let's call them. Because, drastically, just that one change in making sure that you're adding that extra step of like, hey, all these people have PRs, let's go ahead and reach out to them, can yield a huge result. When you're doing niche, you got to do the whole cycle. And then, of course, always sending the direct mail to the people that you don't get phone numbers for and the people that you don't reach after cold calling. But we definitely need, out of 960, we definitely need more leads than that. We should have a deal from that, right? And so surely there's more than one person out of 960 people that are interested in selling their home. You know what I mean? Especially out of niche records, for certain. So we want to look into that. We want to see what's going on there. And of course, those 960, we don't really know what the breakdown of prospect is on this. And so the reason I mention all this is because we're doing a lot of different, vexations here. And you're also doing driving for dollars. What I think you guys would benefit from is really honing in the, cradle to grave on one niche and then D for D. Okay. Or one niche and then just bulk dial high equity. Okay. but really get cradle to grave on one niche. I would rather see, instead of pulling all these different, problems, if you just called high equity, the guy that's in an eviction will end up, on that as well. So you're not truly being first to market here in the way that you're doing it, because you're doing it against 6 different vexations. Yes, you're getting the data in, but you're not. But I don't feel like it's really step-by-step systematic on every single vexation, because every single one of these vexation has a different post game in it, right? Probate's post game is different than tax delinquents post game, and evictions post game is different than the other ones. The also big thing with evictions, by the way, is most counties, if you pull eviction straight from the county, you have to have the phone number of the person doing the eviction. So check into that with evictions, because like my county and quite a few other users, when I talk to them about evictions, they're like, it's my favorite list because I don't have to pay for skip tracing. I have the phone number right from the county. It's direct. It's 100% their phone number, because they have to put it on file for contact purposes, right? Publicly seen. So check with that in Ohio. But I would again, it's totally up to you guys, but I would love to see that. I mean, tax delinquency happens annualized. So why not just pull that once a year, throw it in with, throw that into the, ready mode kind of, dialing, and let your niche sequential truly be first to market on a specific vexation like probate or evictions or, pre-foreclosure. We can't be first to market with tax delinquency because, except for once a year, right? Otherwise, we're playing catch up all the time on it. The D for D stuff, 100%, we can focus on that being for, a form of first to market. We can intake it, we can call through it. But again, I think at 100 records, 250 a week for something like D for D, you can totally throw that into like a Sensei Flow niche sequential type model, but it wouldn't be as aggressive as your probate niche sequential, right? I mean, you'd still do the calling and stuff, but on the backside, I would just, hey, skip trace in one location. If you don't reach anybody, send direct mail, right? Like I wouldn't super complicate the D for D. Intake it, call through it, try to reach them. If you don't, send mail and add more, and just use that as a more of a bulk intake and push out. We're not actually doing it in bulk, so we're not using ready mode for that. Because really there's no point, because it's not a high enough volume of data. So if I were to say, hey, between Deal Machine and just pulling a high equity list in your top county of the county and your top zip codes, they would be the same to me. Because at the end of the day, Deal Machine or driving for dollars is really no different than pulling high equity, except for you have that visual identifier, which is really nice from the sales perspective. Right? You get to know, hey, can you tell me a little bit about the property? Oh yeah, it's just been remodeled 3 months ago. Okay. Yeah. I know this person's full of shit, because I seen it. It wasn't right. And that's really the biggest advantage to D for D stuff. But yeah, anyway, so to summarize here, I think, what I think what you guys would benefit from is saying, hey, this is the first location we're going to skip trace through. This is the second location. Be really strict with that. Bring in probates, skip trace the owner. After you skip trace the owner, they're deceased. You're gonna end up trying to reach them. You're gonna not reach them, most likely. A huge percentage you're not gonna reach. And then skip trace in a second location, or this is totally preference, or just skip directly to trying to find relatives. Right? So check if they have a PR. If they have a PR, just skip trace the PR. If they don't have a PR, find a relative, add their phone numbers in there, or even multiple relatives. So have your VA, if it's in the column, find phone numbers. That'll just be the column, find phone numbers, and they're going to search. And if it shows as the daughter on been verified or whatever, then you're going to add the phone number and you're going to tag it as daughter. And then if it says it's their son, you're going to add the phone number and you're going to tag it as son. Right. And so you're going to add those phone numbers to the record. Then you're going to move to the next column, ready for next dial through. And then the VA is going to call through all those phone numbers that you found online. And then we're going to see how that affects it. And hopefully through that, we can increase the amount of actual prospects that we're getting a hold of somebody who's familiar with the property. Because that's really what we want. Out of 3,500 dials, realistically, I mean, we should at least have, correct numbers wise, 75. I mean, I would expect that to be somewhere around like 300 or so, something like that. Which I think would be out of total numbers. You're going to have a much higher, not interested, but you should have more than one lead. If that doesn't adjust things, right? If we don't start seeing that that's creating more leads, right, then the question is going to end up being our callers themselves, right? Maybe we need to do some new training and listen to some phone calls and get a better process in there, because, you could be getting a lot more correct numbers, but it might end up being you listen to the phone calls and it's like, oh, well, they didn't actually do this objection handler, or they didn't do this, that, or whatever. And so we want to look at that first. But anyway, probates, I would focus in pre-probate probates, and then I would focus on either Deal Machine, drawing for dollars, which is a fantastic thing to do, or bulk dialing, dial through it 3 to 5 times, and skip trace in a second location, dial through it again. If you don't reach them, kick it direct mail, move on to the next. Use it as a way to build up a stack of records. And if you're doing 200 a week, you should reach at least 60% of those, roughly 200, between 40 and 60%. And so you're going to have on a weekly basis, maybe 50 to 75 new properties going to direct mail. Right. And then you're going to track the inbound. And then once the inbound comes in, if they get tagged direct mail, return mail, then go ahead and start researching those individuals, because no matter what, that those are people no one's reaching. So it's worth the time. Obviously, we got to be careful of adding too many crazy, things and processes that could be forgotten about, which ultimately, after forgotten once, it gets forgotten again, and then you have to fix things and you have a mess. And we have to worry about the VA, being able to put too much on VA's plates. We want to use direct mail to our advantage to create inbound. And we want to use the fact that we know that if someone is deceased, and we know that at some point they're going to have to sell a property, that we just need to get a hold of somebody who I can be the person that they know exists when they do want to sell. Focus on getting those correct numbers so that we can create a really good follow-up game to correct numbers, right? At the end of the day, that's all we're doing. We're marketing for correct numbers. If you're in a small county, it's even more important, right? Because for me, for example, we have 1,300 multifamily properties in Okaloosa County. Once I market and I can get a correct number for all 1,300, I'm done prospecting. I don't have to do it anymore. All I got to do is follow-up game. I just got to continue to have follow-up. 1,300 people a year. Just need to make sure that they know 1,300 people hear from me 12 times a year. That's it. And once I do that, once they're ready to sell, maybe a percentage of them won't sell to me, but more likely than not, I'm going to be one front of mind, because once I get that correct number, now I know their name. Now they know my name. I'm going to start sending them direct mail on top of that, right? I'm going to be the authority in front of all these multifamily. I'm going to send them direct mail, every 3 months, saying, hey, it's Tyler, just, wanted you to see my face and let you know I'm still here. But I'm also going to call them like, hey, sent you a postcard. I'm going to try and get their birthdays. I'm going to start really nurturing those relationships long-term. Right. And that's how you got to operate in these like smaller markets, like what we're in. With probate stuff, a little bit different, right? Because you got relatives and everybody else deceased is happening, pulling through. So that's important to dial in that process. As far as tools are concerned, there's a few of these that I think you could, I truly think that you could skim out. I don't know that a couple of them are needed. I'm gonna let that be on you to kind of look at that and trim that back. I don't think we need to be spending $2,500 a month necessarily on tools. I think that just one or two of them, we might be able to save about $250, $300 there. Given our process right now on what we can see we need to be working on. And then maybe in the future, we intake those back in once we actually can see what's going on here. If you guys are going to do anything to where you're going to be like, hey, like I want to build like a consistent lead pipeline, right? You got to be able to have the answer of how many probates or how many records am I bringing in? How many of them do I reach, and how many of them do I not reach? Right, now, out of the ones that I don't reach, what are we doing with those? And the ones that we do reach, is there a task associated to follow up with them? It's pretty simple at the end of the day, because I need to be able to know if I'm pulling in 150 a week, 300 a month or 600 a month. If I only pull in 450 next month, am I not going to get a deal? I don't want you guys to spend a lot of time, trying to get in contact with these people, and really it's just leads, one lead a month, and you guys start feeling like there's a process that's broken here. And in all reality, there is something that's broken, but it ain't the process that at the end of the day, those 960 people that you called are in situations, right? They're all tax delinquent evictions and everything else, but you didn't reach enough of them. That's the problem. Right. And so that's what we have to fix. The problem within the problem is that out of the 960 people, we didn't talk to but 2% of them. And so there's still 950 odd people that, or 40 people that don't know that I want to buy their house. And so that's what we got to fix. Okay. Questions. I know I just kind of went on a little bit of a rant, and, I know it's pretty similar to what I tell most people, but to be honest with you, most people have the same underlying problem within the problem. If I were to, and this is why I'm going to be going live in the Facebook group and literally prospecting myself and showing people like, hey, this is how you do niche sequential. This is how you do this stuff. Of course, you guys could, if you decide to, pull the whole county and just skip trace them all and just throw it in a dialer and just literally just turn through them, all those phone numbers on a monthly basis. You can do that too. If you wanted to do that while being first to market, that's totally fine. If you do this over here, the bulk dialing the right way, and you're tracking the phone numbers and you're just pushing them back and you're just literally just churning through them, that's okay. But I don't know that that's necessarily what you guys need to do to be able to put food on the table. I think that, in a small county, it's more important to choose that small niche, get really proficient in it, build make sure that you have a credibility packet in place, so that once somebody is, you get a hold of somebody, you can say, hey, well, what's your email? Before, let me send you a credibility packet that includes the attorneys that we use. It includes the title companies we recommend. It includes the outline of what is the process of probate. This is what to expect on, your first week of probate, third week, PR being assigned, yada, 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 right? Build the credibility packets out so you can email those over to people. Really go all in on something, right? What does your company stand for? What is the thing that makes it unique in your local market? Why do people give a shit about Drew and Phil, in your small town, Ohio, right? And so it's really kind of what I would focus on a little bit. And once you dial in that process, then it's just really just duplicating it, because you have somewhere you can rely on for getting the data. You understand how to reskip it. You understand how to research siblings if you need to. Your VAs are on point. Probates are really important right now, and so are foreclosures. But I don't recommend foreclosures right now just because of the timeline associated with getting them closed. You're going to have a lot of short sales popping up if you're focusing on probate and foreclosures right now. I feel I have 2 of them right now that, they were probates and ended up being, there were short sales and foreclosures and yada, yada. So, cool. Is either of your VAs admin VAs or just callers?
Right now they're just kind of callers, but I'm starting to train them a little bit more on how to do the admin tasks. Right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's be careful, not to spread, and it's kind of why I asked in the very beginning, like who's responsible for what, right? Because we really got to have that, who's responsible for what are the steps that they do day in and day out. So I want you guys to do an exercise, some last bit of advice, and then you can have some questions here. If you do an exercise on between both of you and just put 3 things down: daily, weekly, monthly, okay, and write down what is Drew's daily responsibilities, what's Phil's, what's Drew's weekly responsibility, what's Phil's, and what's Drew's monthly responsibilities and what's Phil's. and just write those down. Each of you write them down, not with each other, right? And just look at what your perception of each other's are. If there's an overlap in there, that's a problem. There shouldn't be an overlap, right? And then once you look at those, figure out, start at the daily, the weekly, or the monthly, whichever box first, and figure out what is the reportable there, right? What is the deliverable that's needed from that responsibility? If it's, let's just say, Drew, yours is intaking new data and generating leads, right? Then it should be a pretty simple, at the end of the month, review, a deliverable, call it a war report, call it whatever you want. This is how many prospects we had. This is how many we reached, and this is how many leads we got. It could be just 3 simple things, right? And then an explanation on the process for what's happening to the rest of the people you didn't reach, right? Something like that. If it's a project management thing, it should be a war report at the end of the month. This is the status on each of these things, red, green, or yellow. It doesn't have to be complicated things, but red, green, or yellow. If it's yellow, cool. Well, what do you need from Phil, or what do you need from Drew, right? If it's green, cool. I'm good. You don't have to worry about it. That project's going fine, right? And as these yellows pop up, right, that allows you then to have something to tackle and put a process in place to fix so the yellows don't pop up no more. And so the same thing can be applied to your team members, right? Have them do the same exercise. What are they responsible daily, weekly, monthly? See what their thought process is on that, and then fix the confusion that might be in place there, but don't continue to add a bunch more stuff on there without having the ability to intake a red, green, or yellow on a weekly basis. If your VAs are calling, hey, at our weekly meeting, are you red, green, or yellow, right? Are you good to go? Is there anything holding you back from being the best you right now in the company? And give that a go and see if that helps kind of tighten things up a little bit too, because I can feel maybe there's a lot of shit moving on right now, like a lot of things moving, and we need to kind of like declutter a little bit, get back to just focusing on what's right in front of us, and allow us to normalize then the project management and some of these other things while that's happening. Because a week goes by very quickly, right? When we're focusing on a lot of things. I mean, it's fast. It's Wednesday right now. It's crazy. And so anyway, questions?
I don't really have any questions. I guess maybe I can just kind of rephrase. So you want us to skip trace 2 different locations and then 6 total attempts, right? And then deep prospecting?
The deep prospecting would depend upon the situation that's going on, right? If it's for the probate data, we want to skip trace in the first location. And at that, after we don't reach them, at this point, we need to ask a question. Do we decide to skip trace in a second location, or do we decide to start automatically trying to find, relatives or the PR? For now, to be honest with you, I would probably just skip trace in the first location. If you don't reach them, skip right to seeing, is there a PR on file, or is there a relative we can find? Have a VA calling the records, and as they move over to, not contacted after 72 hours, another VA goes in there, searches that person, grabs those phone numbers to the relatives, put them in the record, and then moves it to ready for second dial. And keep it to where it can just move fluidly initially. And once we have that done, 3 or 4 steps, then we can add another process in. And like, okay, good. We're calling through, we're getting relatives and adding those phone numbers in. Now that's going well. We got through some records. This is what our KPI is on that. Let's change one variable. Let's track the results of that change. Maybe instead it's skip tracing the second location first, then seeing what we get, and then, trying to do relatives. Maybe that's the change. But only do one change at a time. But just know that at the end of the day, your responsibility is, if there's 50 new probates this week, right, or 25 to 35, which is what it sounds like roughly you get, which is plenty. How many of those 25 or 35 did you get if they're interested in selling? Did we call the attorney? Did we send the attorney a letter? Did we send the PR a letter? Did we send a letter to the house? Did we reach out to the relatives if there's no PR in place? Did we do all the things that we're supposed to do for those? Otherwise, we're not truly first to market, right? But once you dial it in, you get that done, which takes maybe 2 weeks, right, to actually get it like dialed in and actually have a full process. Write it down on an iPad, whatever you got to do. then it's done. And then we can repeat it, and it can be repeatable moving forward. Okay. And then if you want to add probates to the next county, right? Just move over a county and just start pulling probates there too. Just expand on probates, or dig deeper on another. Once you get probates done, say, okay, cool, we got that done. Foreclosures are next. Let's tackle foreclosures. Do the same thing. Just be very careful. Don't add them all in. You don't need to add them all. Right now, you hit 960 people and you only reach 2% of them. So adding all those in there isn't like needing more data because you're in a small county wasn't the answer, right? Because you didn't reach any of them anyway. You just spent time dialing numbers, right?
Right.
All right.
So just focus more on correct number ratio then.
Yeah, focus first and foremost on correct number ratio. And outside of correct number ratio, prospects like reached, right? Like somebody found about a property. You want a yes or a no, right? And it's not necessarily that you're deep prospecting. Because deep prospecting goes a lot deeper than just looking up the PR's information and stuff like that. But when you're dealing with probates, you got to go that extra mile on the backside because you're dealing with dead people. You know what I mean? They're not supposed to be easy to find. And make sure you get the credibility packet in place. And then once you have that dialed in, then choose the next fixation. And again, I want to stress this because I know people will listen to things like this and they think, oh, well, there he goes again with like niche sequential. Well, number one, it works. We have someone out of Dallas, Houston. You guys have seen him, Jaime, in the community, I'm sure. He focuses on probates, but he does them daily. Just pulls probates daily. He's on track for, I think, 1 million this year, maybe 800 or something like that, off just 7 or 8 new probates a day. That's all he gets. And his team just makes sure they reach him, and that's it. Got another user, 7-figure flipping user. I believe he came on last week. Either way, I had a call with him. They bring in new foreclosures daily. Pull them right from the county. Any new list pendants that pop up, they pull them into their system and they call through them, and they're on track for 2 million this year, just foreclosures. That's it. People think you need a lot, but you don't. But it's totally okay to add in and add in more bulk, right? But you got to be first to market on 2 or 3 niches, 1 to 3 niches, I should say, and then you got to add in that bulk data in order to kind of build that authority. Website stuff and all that stuff kind of gets added on to in the future, but yeah. 2%. We want to increase to 5. We want to increase it to 5. I mean, at least to 3.5. And slowly increment up. We got to see an upward trend. We don't want to see it stagnant. We got to choose a KPI that we're always working to improve. The last thing I'll say on that is when it comes to things to improve is something that I talk about with with the Willing Relentless group is your core 3 KPIs. And so choose 3 core KPIs. KPI number 1, 2, and 3. Number 3 is focus. This is focused on growth. Like, what is your determination of growth in your company? Is it related towards, the total amount of revenue? Is it, whatever, right? There's a KPI that if improved will affect it all. It'll increase your amount of freedom in your business. It'll increase the amount of revenue that you make and everything else. And a lot of times it's a little hint. It's not the amount of leads that you generate, right? It's not the amount of closings that you do. There's 3 KPIs that's there. And the way it works is you have KPI 1, KPI 2, and KPI number 3. Let me just say we'll just use lead gen as an example here. The total amount of dials, right? So we'll say, in this case, you did say 3,500 dials. Cool. So boom, 3,500 dials. That's KPI 1. So we want to increase maybe the amount of dials that we make. KPI number 2 might be maybe the amount of leads generated. Okay. So we'll just put boom, amount of leads generated there. And KPI number 3 might be, instead of leads generated, maybe it's qualified leads, right? And so I'm going to kind of draw this here and trying to show it on my camera. So if we have KPI 1, that's 3,500. And KPI 2, that is, I'm just going to say 50. And KPI 3 is, let's just say 5. Okay, this is dials. This is leads. This is qualified. I think instead of leads, let me change that to correct numbers. I think it's a more open. So we're going to say 3,500 dials. We're going to say 350 correct numbers, 5 qualified leads. Okay, so it looks something like this. Like if you had it on a dashboard, you might not be able to see it. Oops. There we go. It's wrong direction, but you kind of get the idea, right? And so what you do is you say, okay, fantastic. Well, what is the percentage between 1 and 2 and 2 and 3? So right now, my percentage between 1 and 2, 350 divided by 3,500 is 10%. My percentage between 3 and 2, 5 divided by 350, is 1%. Okay, so right away, without having to be too crazy into my KPIs, is it the problem between KPI 1 and 2 or between KPI 2 and 3 in this situation? 3,500 dials, 350 correct numbers is a 10% difference. 350 to 5 qualified leads is a 1% difference. So where is the problem in my company? Is it my lead conversion from correct numbers to leads, or is it my correct number ratio?
Right.
That's a real question, actually.
Oh, okay. Right. Probably in the correct number ratio is the first half is where our problem is.
Well, in this example, the correct number ratio is good, right? 3,500 dials to 350 correct numbers, 10%. That's good. It's a good amount of correct numbers. But our correct number ratio to leads is only a 1%, right? And so I'm going to call through those correct numbers and see if and try and convert them to opportunity. I'm going to try to improve that KPI first, because that's not bad. Now, what if let's just take your situation in an example. We'll just do a legitimate example here. Correct number 3,500 dials to correct number 77, and our leads from that was 1. Which is going to throw us off a bit because that is a really low comparison to correct numbers in general. But let's see what the percentage is there. So we'll do 77 divided by 3,500. Or no, it wasn't 77, was it? It was 75. 75 divided by 3,500. I think that's what it was. Is a 21%, so 0.21 or a 2% rather, a 2% compared to 1 divided by 75 is a 1%, right? You notice how parallel those are? Like they're they're not much different at all, right? That's because we only generated 1 out of 75. So how do you decide on which one to focus on in this scenario? It's based off of the easiest win. And the easiest win here would be to increase the amount of correct numbers, because we can't fix number 3 before you fix 1 and 2. You know what I'm saying? Like you can't fix the backside before you fix the front side. So we got to get the front side better first before we get the backside. And so you had 3,500 dials, 75 correct numbers. That's only a 2%, but you had a 1% between correct numbers and leads. And the other not interested will convert over time. But I know that I could get more leads if my correct numbers did go up. If I changed nothing, but I just got more correct numbers, I know I'm going to organically have more correct leads. So I can predictably say that if I were to go from 75 to 100, maybe I go up to 1.5% on lead gen, right? Or whatever the scenario is. So something simple like that. And that's something that you would do on your weekly meetings. You put it up for your whole team. You have a Google sheet or whatever that has the dashboard on there, and it says total dials, total correct numbers, total leads generated. And then you have the percentage underneath to show the difference. And so every single week you can just compare this week compared to last and watch it improve. And and you make a plan, what's called an OKR. If you need to improve correct number ratio, cool. What are the 3 things we're going to do right now to try to improve that? And that's that. Cool.
Got it.
Sorry. I said I was going to be quiet, and then I ended up splitting out a bunch of more nonsense.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? This one's running a little long. I apologize.
No, that's been great. It's given us a lot to think about and to create within our company to make sure that we're tracking very specifically where our challenges are, which are pretty obvious at the moment. And then next step is to what are we going to do to correct those?
Yeah, I think small changes will have drastic results here. I know you guys, because we've had strategy calls together, right? And I know you guys have been, making changes and adjustments over time here. But just remove some of the noise and kind of simplify a little bit. Choose the location people close deals from, right? And use that as your first location, and then use the second location, and then make sure you do that backhand side. And as far as qualified leads and having leads that are motivated, as of right now, you're not generating leads, right? So we can't even tackle that, right? So as far as that being on here, we need to generate leads first. We got to get some opportunity in. Be 2 a day, be 1 a day, right? But 10 a month, we want to be able to get that conversion of how many leads we need, 10, 15 to get the deal. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you all so much. I appreciate it. Really good job tracking your numbers. Okay. A lot of people wouldn't be able to spit out numbers to begin with. So I don't want to, be 100% negative. We've got to be able to say, hey, yeah, congratulations. Like the fact that you're able to actually spit out numbers is fantastic. That an average the amount of records that are coming in is fantastic, right? The backside is everything that matters. So let's button that up, and then we'll see you either on another strategy call or in a few months to see how you guys are doing after some adjustments. Okay.
You got it. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate you guys so much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.